Greetings and welcome to the next video in our Cohiba 2020 video review series. Today I'm going to look at the Cohiba Siglo VI, which some may argue is amongst the flagship cigars in the Cohiba line. Others will probably say it's Cohiba Esplendidos, or perhaps it's the Cohiba Lanceros, the very first one. That came out in the 60s. And they were given out as diplomatic cigars. I do know one thing about the Cohiba Siglo VI. It sells a lot of cigars. And I'll go into the history of the cigar and why it's so popular. Some of those reasons I think would be they're not the word I'm looking for is objective and factual reasons, because when it comes to Habanos SA and the Cuban tobacco cigar industry, we're not told everything, and sometimes you just got to join the dots. So I'm going to try to join the dots today in today's review. Anyway, I've gone ahead and lit up this ARG June 2015 Siglo VI. It came from a 10-count box that I purchased 4 years ago, I think. And I'm eager to have a look at what it's like now at the close to the 5-year mark. I can tell you two things about it so far. You'll notice that that's the newer bands, what we call band G, that has like a hologrammatic identification if you put a UV light in the band. That was first introduced on the 2012 release, the Cohiba Commemorate Extra, and from the middle of 2014 onwards, it started to get put onto other vitolas in the Cohiba line. So what that means is that if you ever get a Cohiba cigar from anybody, gifted one, or if you go by in a shop and you see band G on it, and if it's not a Cohiba Commemorate Extra, because all of the Cohiba Commemorate Extras came with these hologrammatic bands, then you know it's 2014, 2015 onwards. The other thing I wanted to show you is, you probably can't see it, but just there's a sort of a dimple there. The draw on this is perfect. The packing on this construction is great so far. Just the firmness of the cigar, the aroma, just wonderful. But that dimple, if you ever get that dimple off a cigar, the theory on, and we've discussed this on our forum a few times over the years, the theory is that it's one of those marks from certain torsadors. Certain torsadors do it. They put a dimple onto the cigar sometimes to mark that it's theirs. That's the theory. I'm not 100% sure if that is, but to me it sounds like a plausible theory. It is something that enthusiasts do look for. Yeah, well, there you go. I don't get it that often, but I've got to admit I am a bit happy that I've got it in today's cigar. So in this review, I'm going to talk about the Cohiba Siglo VI release, why it's so popular, why it sells so much, and basically just some other things that are unique to this cigar and what makes it iconic. A couple of tasting notes in this initial third. Certainly, I got that that hay, that refined hay, a bit different than in the first two reviews that I did from the 2006 cigars of the Siglo III and the Siglo IV. I also got more of a honey sweetness than in those cigars, and I got like a refined baking spice that you get when you've left cigars for some time. Spice is very minimal on it. but it is there. It's that Cohiba spice that we know if you smoke Cohiba cigars. Very, very minimal. But the one question, am I picking up butter notes? I've got to say, I think I am. That's the way I see it. I have this theory to me, or according to my palate, the Siglo VI stands out a little bit differently to the other Siglo 1 to 5 cigars. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. I think that you could tell from the time that it came out. It was announced in 2002, although it did not hit the market until 2003. It was a unique size, a canonazo. I think I said canonazo. I think it is. I think I've said it correctly. 52 ring gauge by 150 mils, or 6 inches. If you look up Cuban Cigar website, only the Cohiba Siglo VI and some other special releases with it have been released in this size. The Cohiba Grand Reserva, Casaccia 2003, that came out in 2009, probably the best cigar I've ever smoked. And a number of you would agree and concur, and have said similar. Is also a Canonazo 52 by 150 ml size. The 2010 Grand and Mundo, Monte Cristo Grand and Mundo, was this size, and Trinidad special release, Trinidad Special Humidor in 2010 to mark the 40th anniversary of Trinidad. Funnily enough, that came out a year late, came out in 2010, but that was also this size. So it was interesting that it came out in a unique size. I think it laid the foundations for releases afterwards in terms of the size, because up until that point, cigars didn't come unless they were pyramides, unless they were like a Monte Cristo No. 2, which is a 52 ring gauge. But at the end of it, it's tapered. It fits in your mouth, and it's okay. But not like this. You know, when the Cohiba Siglo VI came out, it was a big cigar. It was the biggest regular production cigar at the time that it came out. And it got rave reviews. In fact, to this day, if you talk amongst enthusiasts about the very best Cohiba Siglo VI cigars, it is a 2003 Cohiba Siglo VI release, or the cigars that came out at that time. Now, my theory as to why that is, why are those cigars rated high? And although Cohiba Siglo VI subsequently they've come on after that, and this Cohiba Siglo VI itself is smoking fantastically. You may not recall, but at the time in 2002 there was a 10-year release. The Siglo VI Humidor. There was 500 of these humidors made. And in that Siglo VI Humidor was the 1992 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and the new Siglo VI. And there were 15 cigars each. So 500 humidors times 15 cigars equals a run of 7,500 cigars that were produced. I think making those 7,500 cigars for this special humidor release took time and delayed the release of the Siglo VI to the general market. I also believe that the leaf that went into that Siglo VI Humidor for those Siglo VI cigars, those first cigars, was left over and was not wasted, which is a typical thing that basically Habanos SA does in their production. They don't waste anything. That's why when they announce that bands have changed, you get a new box and it's the old bands. Well, those old bands haven't been used up. They just get used up until they get used up. This is a common thing. And I think that the leaf was left over, went into those 2003 Cohiba Siglo VI, and that's my theory why they're noted the way they are. I do think that the Cohiba Siglo 6 is slightly different to the 1 to 5. In the same way that other releases, in terms of its blend, in the same way that other releases have shown to be later on. And an example of that would be the Hoya de Monterey La Jolla de San Juan and the Hoya de Monterey La Jolla de Rio Seco. Now, both those cigars, when they came out, they were different. Let's put it that way. They were different to your stock standard La Jolla line cigars, such as the De Prince or the De Gourmet or the De Deux. I found that the De San Juans were more characteristics of black tea. Certainly had a creaminess to it. The De Rio Seco was more of a ginger sweetness, a gingerbread sweetness. Yeah, hard to say if it's more creamy. Probably more creamy. Yeah, I'm thinking about it now. Maybe a little bit more creamy than the De San Juan, but it was different to the San Juan. And I think that this is different to the Siglo 1 to 5. And I'll probably go further into that when I come into the middle third. But so far, so good. This is smoking great. Not so spicy through the nose as the Siglo 3 and Siglo 4 that I had yesterday. Very easy to retrohale. I'll do it one more time. Very refined. It's a quality cigar. Look, you can see from the ash there the way it's burning. It's rolled really, really well. I'll come back and talk more about that when I get well into the middle third. See you soon. So I'm into the middle third, and yeah, look, the Cohiba Siglo series, in my opinion, it's not a cigar that either through the 1 to the 6. It hasn't got great notes of complexity through the thirds. That's just my opinion. You may be different, but they're fairly consistent through from the middle to the end. What changes is the intensity, I guess. But for me, the one thing that I've noticed is that hay element is still fairly strong. Any notes of like a mocha coffee or a milk coffee that you can get in these has certainly receded over time, or maybe it was never this strong in the blend. I'd have to remember what this cigar smoked like from years back. I do remember that when this was younger, and Cohiba Siglos in general, when they're younger, you can get more of that mocha coffee out of them, and they're certainly more crispy. They're more, yeah, there's a crispiness to them. You'll know what I mean when you smoke them. This is way more mellow at this stage, and what I'm curious to find out is what this would be like with more age on it. But look, anyway, going back to the Siglo 6 blend, why I think it's different to the Siglo 1 to 5. For me, Siglo 1 and 2 are like very close young siblings. They're the ones that are going to be the most strongest in terms of strength and flavour in the Siglo line. The Siglo 1, in fact, even though it's the shortest and the smallest ring gauge, to me that's the strongest flavours, strongest in terms of the strength too. I find the 3 and 5 are related, mainly because they're both 40. The 5 is 43 ring gauge, similar ring gauges. The 5 is about 3/5 of an inch longer, 15 millimeters longer. But they're similar in the way they taste to me, not too much different. The Siglo 4 being a Corona Gorda is a little different again in the way it smokes. But I find the 1 to 5 they have those elements of the grass and hay that I was talking about yesterday. When they're older, you can get that vanilla bean. Certainly get the citrus, the honey. Yes, you get all that. But when it comes to the Siglo VI, I find that it stands alone in the Siglo line for having elements of what you get in the Linea Classica line, which is more of that, that mocha coffee or that milk coffee, more of those butter notes as it ages. That's just me. That might not be you, but that's just what I find with them. I find that they have a slightly different blend. I think for that reason, the Siglo VI stands out amongst enthusiasts as being different, or a cigar that they go for in comparison to the Siglo 1 to 5. But the thing with the Siglo VI, it's a cigar that has to have certain leaf to it, or else Habanos will say they're not going to roll it. So the last 2 or 3 years we had shortages of Siglo VI. We've had shortages of Behiki, which have continued. And there recently was an interview for the co-presidents of Habanos SA. I think they were discussing Behiki. When they don't have the leaf in enough quantity and quality, it's going to be in hiatus. And the thing about the Siglo VI and the Cohiba in general is you'll notice the shade of it, the wrapper. It's never more darker than a Colorado Claro. Never. That's not the true if you would compare it to a San Cristobal de la Habana El Principe. How many times have you seen darker shades and lighter shades of that cigar? Often. In fact, there's other cigars where I've seen it. I've seen it on Ramon Awanas Specially Selected, where you get the darker shade or the lighter shades. Monte Cristo No. 2 is a famous example. A number of times on 24 listings, El Prez has put Monte Cristo No. 2s up and you get lighter ones or darker ones. I've seen it for El Rey del Mundo Choix Supremes. But you're not going to see it for the Cohiba line. You're not. It's got to have a certain wrapper on it. It's got to be a certain shade. The wrapper's got to be supple. Whereas it's not happening for Cohiba. And I think that's why recently it's gone into hiatus. It has a lot to do with why the blend is the way it is. And I think when it comes to the Cohiba Siglo VI, if you understand principles of economics, I remember when I was in high school studying elastic demand and inelastic demand, products that no matter how much the price goes up, the demand seems to stay the same. And I'm talking about bread and milk, perhaps petrol. Inelastic demand might be the price of umbrellas in certain times of the year might change because when it's wet and cold weather, you want an umbrella, but when it's beautiful weather in the spring or in the summertime, you go to buy an umbrella. The umbrella, there's not as much demand for it. These principles are easy to understand. The Cohiba Siglo VI is one of those cigars that we've noted on our forum a few times just how much that price has gone up in the last 4 or 5 years. And I mean, if I look at the price I paid for this 10-count box and what it would cost the same 10-count box today, if you look at the US price or the Australian price and you add taxes, it'd be comparable that it's probably close to double. There's a lot less Cohiba Siglo VI. It has come back on the market the last six months, I would guess, 6 to 9 months. We started to see more of it in the market. Now it's becoming much more. But the price of it is for a 25 count. Off the top of my head, it could be $800, $850 US. And 5 years ago, it would have been. I think it would have been somewhere in the vicinity of, I'm just guessing, maybe 400, 450. The best guess would be something closer to that. But whereas maybe the other Siglo 1 to 5 hasn't gone up as comparably in the meantime, this Siglo 6, it just sells. It's just the one cigar back from the time that it was released in 2003 that changed things for Buenos Aires. It was a regular production cigar that was in great demand from the time that it came out. It was a good cigar, a larger ring gauge cigar, and it set forward the path for special releases that have come afterwards. I'm thinking of Cohiba Talisman is similar, which incidentally I think the size of it is called the Canonazo Doble or Double Canonazo. If you think of the H. Upmann Connoisseur A and the Connoisseur B, the Connoisseur A is a 52 ring gauge by 140 millimeter cigar. The Connoisseur B is a Genialis cigar. It's a 54, I think, by 150. I think it's a little bit bigger in ring gauge, a little bit longer. And Cohiba Talisman, similar, 54 ring gauge. It's 1/32 of an inch bigger, but it's about 4 millimeters, a sixth of an inch longer, just a little bit. But the price point of it, it's quite high. But it didn't stop selling much more in 2017 than the other comparable 2017 limited editions. I think it was a Party of San Bolivar at the time. It was the Talisman that was hard to get. I think one thing I want to tell you about this cigar, the way it's smoking, is coming up close to the 5-year mark, and I think I did mention it before. It hasn't got those notes of mocha, but it's certainly buttery. I think that's one thing that appeals to enthusiasts in going for this cigar, and it's got all the hallmarks of a quality refined cigar. I guess that's why it's in demand the way that it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back into the final third and give my concluding thoughts. But so far so good. It's been a wonderful cigar. So I'm into the final third, and one thing I can remark about the cigar is it's still at a point in its development where it has built up in intensity in the final third that I did not get in those 2006 cigars in the first reviews. Not anywhere near. Still okay to smoke. It's still fine. I just retrohaled, and in fact I'll do it again. And it certainly has built up quite a bit in the retrohale, to the point where I would not, just me personally, I wouldn't retrohale as much when it's that strong, which it is a bit more in the final third. But yeah, the construction-wise, the rings on the ash, fantastic. The coning's there. The ash length, I've only ashed twice. They're both well over an inch, which are the hallmarks of a quality cigar. So the Cohiba Siglo 6 is just one of those cigars where, I guess it does get rolled really, really well. Tends to, not all the time, like Cuban cigars. In general, you know what I'm talking about. If you smoke Cuban cigars, you're not going to get that quality consistency in terms of its construction all the time. But in general, Cohiba Siglo 6, it tends to be fairly consistent construction-wise. It has picked up in like an earthiness type flavour in the final third, but I've just been happy to bring this review to you and happy to smoke this. What I'm going to do is I'm planning to smoke a 2006 Siglo VI in the next review, and I'm going to compare that Siglo VI to this one and bring to you the differences. I look forward to doing that in the next review. Until then, I should say, I bid you happy smoking, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.